आओ जी मेरे देश मेरे गांव मेरी धूप मेरी छाँव से मिलाओ। आओ जी मेरे देश मेरे गांव मेरी धूप मेरी छाँव से मिलाओ। आओ जी मेरे देश मेरे गांव मेरी धूप मेरी छाँव से मिलाओ। आओ जी मेरे देश मेरे गांव मेरी धूप मेरी छाँव से मिलाओ। भूल जाए जो रास्ता थोड़ा वापस आना दौड़ा दौड़ा। गलियां लेके बैठी हैं तेरी याद था जिसको तूने छोड़ा। यादें भूल सकता लेकिन खुशबू भूल न पाएगा।
Good evening everyone, and let me start with wishing all of you a very Merry Christmas and a great year ahead. For the last episode of 2023 for Right Circle, which is powered by She Cements and it is done in association with Prabha Khaitan Foundation, of course Syahi, ITC Rajputana, Ehsaas Women of Jaipur and Spaggia Foundation. We have with us today someone I've been chasing for the last 4 months. It's hard to pin her down. So we are very, very lucky and fortunate that finally she's made it to Jaipur. Presenting you with Arati Kumar Rao, who is an environmental photographer, writer, artist, a National Geographic explorer, documenting the effects of environmental degradation. She works primarily in the Indian subcontinent and she chronicles anthropogenic changes in landscapes and their fallouts on livelihood, culture and biodiversity. She is, in my eyes, one of the most creative people that I've seen. I've been watching her on Instagram and all her sketches and paintings, oh my God, just stunning. Anyway, she's also working through still and moving images, soundscapes, long-form narratives and art. Her work has appeared in the National Geographic magazine and a lot of other publications of great repute. We are extremely fortunate and proud that Syahi represents her first book, Margin Lands, Landscapes on the Brink. It was also shortlisted for various literary awards, but the biggest laurel for Arati this year has been that she is among BBC's 100 Inspiring and Influential Women for 2023. I don't think I'm happy with that. Thank you. And I'm going to leave Arati in Aastha Johri's able mind and hands. She's a human and planet-centered person born in Jaipur. Very surprising, I just met her for the first time last year. And I was like, where were you all these years? She's a filmmaker, she's a creative director, intersectional environmentalist, working across a range of visual media. She's made films with children and for governments. She has helped reimagine an ancient fort and has documented a living one. She has also introduced life into barren land and water bodies also. Designed exhibitions to celebrate skill and culture. She best expresses herself by helping other people realize their dreams, dreams that do not come at the cost of another human or the planet. Aastha enjoys raw, honest conversations. She's fascinated by a range of human behavior and experience. And I've had the good fortune of meeting her and spending a whole day with her, seeing the kind of work she's put in for the last decade. But with that, can we please welcome Arati and Aastha on stage. Please keep your phones on silent.
Thank you so much, Meeta. I feel absolutely privileged to be sharing this space with you, Arati. And in the past almost 2 months that I got to read the book, of which I read the book only for about 2 weeks. I am genuinely very inspired and amazed by the work that you have done and the heart that you put into the spaces that you go and in the ecologies that you speak about. How many of you have read the book?
We read about her and her book. Yes. We shall read the book.
Okay, all right. I guess I just wanted to start by asking Arati of when you were writing the book, who were you really writing it for, and what were the kind of people and personalities that you hoped would read, and what's the kind of impact, if at all, that you were looking forward to?
Thank you, Aastha. Thank you, Meeta, for those very kind words and for being the wonderful person that you are. I'm really fortunate to have Meeta represent me in this book. Thank you, everybody, for coming out today. So when I wrote this book, Aastha, it was over 10 years. The work was done over 10 years. And I was really writing these stories for the people of the land. And that could be both the people that may or may not read this book, but also people in power, people who are, in positions where they can influence policy, and for myself, really. So it was not any one person, and anyway, with the way I write, I think it was more keeping the land front and center. It was the story of the land, it was the story of the landscapes, and it's the story of these people who are affected by what's happening to these landscapes. So it's almost a tribute to them, their struggles, as well as the resilience that they show in the face of immense adversity. And also as a tribute to the wonderful people who are doing good work, trying to restore the land, like Chatar Singh, who is the main character in the first 2 chapters of the book. Here in the desert, actually. He works in the Jaisalmer district.
Yeah, Chatar Singh and I have also had the pleasure of working together, of course, in a very limited capacity. But when Meeta told me that I should do this and I started reading the book and the first chapter had his name, I mean, there was an instant connection. And for those who you don't know, I mean, I called Chatar Singh right after reading his name, and I'm like, do you know that you're mentioned in this book? And he's like, of course. And he said one thing about Arati, and he said that unme bahut dheeraj hai. And which means that, I mean, she writes in the book on how many times she's gone back to the desert to understand the same ecosystem and the same people and the same story. And I don't think it is possible without the kind of courage and patience that you may have had to time and again bring forth.
And curiosity. Because for the first time I went, it was in the summer, and the Jaisalmer district in summer, if you look at it, you will imagine or you will think that there's no water here. But in fact, there is a lot of water in the desert. And when Chatar Singh and I were sitting on top of a dune, it was a hot June day, and we were sitting on top of the dune, and there had been no rain in that area for 22 months, almost 2 years. And he just starts digging. With Chatar Singh, you don't ask questions, you just wait for him to talk because he can't be hurried. So he just starts digging the dune, and within 6 inches of digging, he comes up with wet sand in the dune. And it had not rained there for 22 months. So I looked at him and I said, "Ye narmi kahan se?" So he said, "You don't realize that in the belly of the dune is water. And the shepherds who work and who live in the desert, they know this, and that's why they know where to dig their wells, and their wells are dug at the bottom of the dunes." So we climbed down the dune, and he showed me in a line along the, the Dhoras are long, right? Dhoras dunes, along, and all along there are these hand-dug wells, which are being used, actively used by the shepherds. And me as a city slicker going there, I thought it's barren or dry, when in fact there's a lot of water in the desert. So little things like this. I wouldn't know this from just going once and sitting and interviewing him, in a room over chai. But just spending time in landscapes, walking with him, we'll drive someplace and then he'll suddenly say, "Roko, roko." He'll open the door and he'll start walking. And you're like, okay, should I follow? And then obviously you have to follow because he's gone off somewhere. And then you follow, and then he teaches you and teaches you and teaches you. And it's just fabulous. So a lot of curiosity too. So Dheeraj maybe, not as much as the people who actually live on that land have, but yes, immense curiosity because I learned so much while doing research for these stories.
Yeah. Arti, you start the book by talking about the time that you spent in Bombay and how your father used to take you out for bird watching and how he introduced you to the amazing literature about poets and environmentalists and biologists. And then you go off into talking about that you had fever. And that emotion actually kind of stuck with me because from that you're essentially saying that I realized that my body was sick, and from then on you go to say that and she was actually a market researcher in some company, and that if you could do whatever you wanted to do, is this what you would do? I'm saying it badly, but you say something to the tune of that.
Yeah.
So that actually struck a chord in me because I guess everybody who's almost my age, we continuously ask ourselves this question like, who am I? And what am I doing? And why am I here? And the sickness inside of you and the sickness of our urban living environments, I found that there was striking parallels in it. And I just wondered if you wanted to share something about that.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And sometimes when you're on the go, like I was when I was in my 30s, 20s, 30s, you don't take a pause. And when I fell sick with typhoid and I was forced to be on the bed doing nothing, it was a pause. And that's when I realized that I was not doing what I've always wanted to do. I was doing what I could do and was doing fairly well at it. I had a wonderful job and a great boss, couldn't complain. But growing up, the only thing I always wanted to do was to tell stories. Was to tell stories about the landscape. I used to pore over National Geographics that would come home. And there was a particular one called the Mega Transect where this man walks across the Congo. And I was thinking that that's what I want to do. I want to walk across landscapes and tell these stories. And then lying on that bed, burning up with fever, I was like, I have to do what I want to do. And that's when I quit. And it came as a surprise to everyone because who quits a paying job to become a pauper? I do. So, and I had to start from scratch because I had never been in that space before. I'd never been in the city of Bangalore before. I've grown up in Mumbai. And so it was all new for me and I had to start from scratch. But it was something that till today I think when I wake up there's nothing else I'd rather do.
Do you think parents influence a lot of what we become? And especially in your case, do you think your parents played a role? Or living in Bombay played a role?
It's so funny. Absolutely. And I think every day I thank my parents almost for never coming in the way, They allowed me to do whatever I wanted. I was very interested in physics, and so I went and did a master's in biophysics, and then worked at TIFR for 3 months before quitting, deciding I never want to do physics again, because I don't want to be stuck in a lab. I want to be outside meeting people, talking to people. They didn't say no. They didn't bat an eyelid. I'm just amazed. And that kind of freedom is just invaluable for a child who is exploring and trying to understand what life will be for them. Not that I understood it. I wandered a lot anyways after that too. But they never stopped me. And I think that trust that they had and that leeway that they gave me was invaluable, absolutely invaluable. And then, yes, of course, for my father, he was an avid environmentalist, even though he worked at Tata Power, which was a thermal company in Bombay. And he was way ahead. In the 80s itself, he was talking renewable energy. He built a solar cooker for us. We used to cook our food in a solar cooker. And then he built a biogas plant for the colony that we lived in. So he was way ahead of his time. And he would read about these things out loud to us. And so, those formative things. When I decided finally to quit the corporate job, I was at Intel. When I decided to quit the corporate job, there was no doubt in my mind about what I wanted to do. Of course, I wanted to tell environmental stories. So yes, I think that was a huge... And my mum, for her, English, communication, how you speak, how you present, all of those things, handwriting, all of that, she was very, very particular about those things. And I think that also stood me in great stead, because even if you have an idea or you have a story, but you're not able to express it well, then you find yourself at the short end of the stick. So I think that also, so the combination of these two, I thank them almost every day. They're right now at home in Bangalore. I just keep thanking them, because I think I was very fortunate.
Absolutely. I think in many ways, this passing on of knowledge and wisdom, of however you acquire it, whether it is for the Chatar Singhs of the world, or by just living on the land and listening to the landscape and just walking, touching, feeling, like you said, seeing with your whole body and not just with your eyes. I remember I read a story a while ago about when the tsunamis hit the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. There was a lot of destruction that happened in Nicobar compared to what happened in Andaman. And the reason was that the tribes of Andaman, they had this folklore which essentially in their language said that whenever the ground shakes, move to a higher plane. And so that knowledge had been passed down. It's an oral tradition. And it was passed down in those tribes, but Nicobaris, which is a relatively younger tribe, didn't have that tradition. So, it's incredible how, the language, what we wear, how we think, and how we communicate. It gets passed on from whether it is from parent to child or from within communities.
Yeah, I think, what you're bringing up, Aastha, is probably the most important thing that we, going forward, will find that we need to preserve. All of us know about, how the climate's changing and so on. Whether or not we ascribe why and so on to it. The point is things are changing, and these people who live with the land, they know how to adapt, and they understand the land, and so they can make even small changes to be able to adapt. And we sit in the cities, and I won't speak for everyone, but just the very fact that we're in the city has disconnected us from the land, and in many ways we have lost that connection, that pulse. We have lost that rhythm of the land. We don't eat with the seasons, we don't behave with the seasons, we don't build with the seasons, we don't do anything that is a natural rhythm. We've kind of cocooned ourselves, and then when things change, we don't know how to behave, because it changes things within the cocoon too, and we don't have the tools anymore to tackle that. But these people still do have it, and I really feel that listening to the Chatar Singhs of the land is probably the best thing we can do right now, and not be, there's the whole debate about the lettered and the unlettered. They may be unlettered, but they're abundantly wise. And I think listening to the people who can read the land is going to become more important than listening to people who read books.
Absolutely.
And then you write the books.
And then you don't read the books.
So interestingly, the book is about the people who read the land. So hopefully, you will learn about the people who read the land. Yeah.
What is native?
Yeah.
Do you guys know what native actually means? Yeah, what is native?
From the inception, the basic. Arising from the land.
Local. Sorry?
Those who belong to the land, as the land connects.
Yeah.
Perhaps following the tradition of that particular land for a long time. People who are living in a particular land and following the traditions of that particular land.
A friend of mine recently asked me this question, like, what is native? Because can I grow, I don't know, passion fruit in Rajasthan? I mean, if I give the right nutrients to the land, maybe I can. But is it off the land? Perhaps not.
No.
But there are so many landscapes that have changed over the years that, because, the Thar Desert, for example, was an ocean bed at one point in time, right? So what is native? And is it important for us to evolve with whatever native now is? Or is it important to kind of go back to where it began?
This is damn interesting. Okay, so here's how I see it, and I'm sure every one of us will have our own opinion over here. So this is the way I see it. Native, I feel, is, yes, something that comes from the land which has evolved with the land. So even if the land has changed, this has evolved with the land over the years, and it has come up with the land, and it knows how to thrive in that land. Having said that, I just came from Kutch, Gujarat, where I have seen the most dense forest of Prosopis juliflora, Baulia, ever, anywhere.
Yeah.
And it has taken over the landscape. Maybe 300, 400 years from now, that will be called native. But the question will be, is that what the native animals of the land use? Is that what they get their best nutrients from? What about the savan grass that used to be there in the desert, which used to grow, which is what the desert goats used to feed on, and gives them nutrition and stuff like that. So when a non-native thing is replaced, it replaces native, and then over the years takes over the land, is it a colonizer or is it native? I would say it's a colonizer. It never becomes native. So for me, I think that's the difference. It's not something that is innate to the interconnections of the land itself. Something that is native to that is elemental to the interconnections of the land itself, I would say is native. So for me, all these other things that have come from outside, in some ways, the way we go into places where people are still living by the land and impose our way of doing things, I feel that can also be seen as a way of colonizing a culture. And by we, I mean even all Indian over Indian only. I mean, within, I'm not saying anybody foreign, but just foreign to the way the land works. If you impose something, and eventually the land it's going to revolt. It will change. It will either become too saline or it will become completely uncultivable. Something will happen because it's not the way the land was. Of course, now if you talk about geological ages where, like you said, the Thar changed from something to something else, that's different. I'm talking about within our lifetimes.
Got it. Yeah.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah. You're right, really beautifully, you know that, right? I mean, you said something like, you compared rain to a veil of indigo, and
that's how I saw it. I am not kidding you. We're driving through the Thar Desert, and I made everybody stop. Those of you who know Pradeep Krishan, he was with us at that time, and I made everybody stop, and I jumped out of the car, and I was like, look at this. It was twilight, but it was purple. I'm not kidding you. I have a photograph now. I wish I had this thing to show the photograph. Anyways, never mind. We were planning whether we should show photographs or not. But anyways, and so the whole scene was purple, and there was this thin veil as though somebody's dupatta had just kind of, just fallen from the sky like this. And that was rain. And there were camels walking. I mean, when you see something like that, you have to describe it like you see it. So sometimes it's completely inspired by nature itself.
So we are sitting in Jaipur, and it is said to be one of the first planned cities of the country. It was built about 300 years ago. And I mean, my experience of really living in places are of Bangalore and of Jaipur. And Bangalore was a city built around nature and trees and ponds, and Jaipur was built around craft and culture and art and traditions. So there is a lot of how do you say? When people listen to the land and then build from they're literally taking the materials from where they are, they're erecting it, and they're on that they're showcasing all the beautiful things of the Araish and the lime and the frescoes and all of that, and just the way that it is planned, you know that they're thinking not of today, they're thinking of generations. So how do we bring this systemic thinking into the spaces that we create, into the environments that we create? And yeah, that's the question.
If I knew it, I think we would be able to solve world hunger. And I'm not kidding. Because what you have brought up is really the crux of the issue. If we listened to the land and used and built on the land in a way that is correct, right, and appropriate for the land, which is what our ancestors did earlier in Jaipur and where I live now, Bangalore. It's a mountainous city, right? It's 990 meters above sea level, and the guy who said there were settlements in Bangalore even before that, but this man, he created Bangalore as a city. He has this cascading. He built a cascading set of lakes. So when the rain falls on top, it cascades. If one lake gets filled, it cascades and comes to the next, comes to the next, comes to the next. In the 16th century, so 1567 or something like that, he built it. Imagine, right? So unlettered, he doesn't know his engineering and all of that, but he does all this. And then we come in, and where one lake cascades from another, we build a road, we build buildings. Then another lake cascades from another, we build highways, we build things. And if anybody has heard of the flooding in Bangalore, you know why. So the point really, it's that simple. And that's why when I was writing this book, I kept thinking that, will anybody read it? Because this is just common sense. Where have we lost this common sense? Why, if anybody reads it, they'll be like, ye kya keh rahi hai? Haan, pata hai humko. Because really, that's what it is. And it's so simple. You listen to the land and you do what right by the land. And truly, what's right for this part of Jaipur may not be the same that is good for what's on the outskirts of Jaipur or somewhere else very close to. You think Jaipur is Jaipur. We tend to look at things as conglomerates, One river, Ganga same as Brahmaputra, same as Kaveri, same as Narmada. No. Every local geography has its own language. It has its own spirit. And it has its own ecology. And if you do not listen to that and you try to apply one to another, one size fits all, you find yourself where we are right now. And when, our ancestors knew this, but I think when we adopted the British system of education looking at the land, that was what worked for the Thames. It worked for the Rhine. It worked for places in Europe. Our rivers are silty rivers. They come from a completely different, they flow differently. We have a monsoon. They don't have all that. But we applied exactly what they taught us without thinking to our rivers. And we have all the problems every monsoon. because of that lack of adapting to the local geography. I mean, we've all heard of the floods in Assam, and we think, oh my God, it's, the river is flooded, the river is creating this destruction. It's not the river, it's what we did to the river. Because if you look at it, if you look at all the bunds and the dikes and the embankments that were created, it has cut off all the natural wetlands in which the floods used to absorb the floods and then grow the fish, and then the fish would come back into the mainstream. There are no fish in the Brahmaputra anymore. 80 to 90% of the fish are gone. I mean, just see, right? Just by not understanding our local geographies and doing right by what is right for us.
Yeah.
Apne पैर पे कुल्हाड़ी मारा हमने.
That was actually, it reminded me, it was really cool when I read what you said, that you're taking away the boulders from the rivers, but under the boulders is where the fish live. Because the fish is not there anymore, the fishermen have nothing to eat. Because the fishermen have nothing to eat, they're losing their homes, and they have to migrate. And you use, I think you said 200 million people across
India.
South Asia.
Yeah, South Asia, yeah.
Are currently migrating.
Around the
Oh,
world.
sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't realize.
It's the size
million
of
people.
Brazil. Anytime in India, 200 million people are on the move. Can you imagine? And of course, when you ask them, they'll say, I'm moving for a job. I'm moving because prospects are better somewhere else. But why? Because their own native lands have been destroyed in so many different ways. If you go to the rivers of the east, I mean, the Ganga, the Brahmaputra, these are massive rivers, right? Sacred rivers, massive rivers, beautiful rivers, untamable rivers. But the fishermen who depended upon those rivers are deep in debt because there are no fish in the river. The Ganga fisheries collapsed because of the Farakka Dam. There used to be a hilsa fish. If there are any Bengalis around here, they would know that the hilsa, it swims up to spawn. It used to swim up to Allahabad to spawn. But when they built the Farakka, it couldn't go any further, and that whole fisheries collapsed. The people in Bihar, I've met, and I write about it, fishermen in Bihar who say that we used to have hundreds of boats leave every morning for fishing, and now there aren't any. There aren't any. Because there's no fish, there's no big fish. Tiny, tiny fish, what they call trash fish, is what they have to depend upon. And they get nothing. And then they come and tell me, आपने तो बोला पढ़ाओ पढ़ाओ, हमने बच्चे को पढ़ाया, अभी पढ़ाई के बाद अभी ये तो BA है, BA पास है, first class first है, फिर भी कोई jobs नहीं है. So imagine, right? We've pushed them into a market economy without giving them the support for that also. And we've also taken away their traditional livelihood. So from both sides, they're hit.
Yeah.
And this is our demographic dividend. We are a young country. We have so many kids growing up without education, without jobs.
In a country like India.
In a country like India. I mean, imagine this kind of population. And don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about any one government. This is sadiyon se aise hota aa raha hai. This is consecutive governments who have not listened to the land. Consecutive governments. This is not against any one person or one government.
Yeah.
Sorry. Let's talk about something fun.
Very, very depressing.
I know, I'm so sorry.
But there are some nice things, like I think Demoiselle cranes, for example, they fly in from Siberia all the way to Khaitan in Jaisalmer.
Everywhere in Jaisalmer district, actually, if you drive through during the winter, even just in the middle of nowhere where there are no tourists, you'll see flocks and flocks of Demoiselle cranes.
Demoiselle cranes from Mongolia.
Yes, from Siberia, Mongolia, they're coming from there and they come here. And there's so much beauty, so much of the land. That's why I feel that India still can change and turn things around. Because we have a nature of living with our fellow creatures. That part of our DNA, it's not there in the West. They have done away with their predators. They've done away with half their, wild population. We still have so much. Even the smaller cities, we have a chance to regain all of this and do right by the land even now. It just takes a little bit of listening.
Is there a toolkit to the listening?
slow down. We are in such a hurry and we are so blinded. Imagine all of us sitting in cars and going zzz. What are we seeing? Are we seeing and noticing anything at all? Imagine slowing down, putting on our walking shoes and walking even just in our neighborhood. Imagine the amount of things you'll see and learn and the changes you can make right there to make it thrive. And I'm not talking about Wi-Fi and smart cities and all that. Smart in a different way. Smart in a way that sustains us. You know, in 1949, Aldo Leopold, who was a hunter, he was a forest ranger in the US, he turned ecologist. He said in 1949, okay, so this is almost a century ago, he said that civilization has so cluttered the elemental man-earth relationship with gadgets and middlemen that the awareness of it is growing dim. We imagine that industry is what supports us, forgetting what supports industry. And today, we still imagine that industry and technology will save us. But really, it's the land which supports everything, and we need to first protect that. It's a simple thing, you know, there's no money, unfortunately, there's no big money in it. You don't need concrete to help the land. So it's not in the interest of people who are interested in lining their pockets to help the land, you know, just resurrect and to keep it resilient. It's just to do right by what is right for that land.
It couldn't have been easy, no? I mean, you have a child and you have a family and you just pack your bags and go into one ecosystem, stay there for months with, I don't think there would be toilets or rooms even in some places. I mean, I don't know. Because these are the people who are...
Yeah.
They're losing their land every year or 2 years.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine what that is.
Yes, for them living is really hard. And some, you know, there's two sides to that. It was not easy for me, but what is my discomfort in front of their disenfranchisement? And that's something that used to always bother me. I could get up, leave, come back home to Bangalore. I had a roof over my head, hot food on the table. But them, the people that I was with when I was telling their stories, where will they go? They can't get up and leave. So my discomfort or my it not being easy, it shriveled to something so small. I was like, who am I to complain? When these guys really are losing everything and multiple times. If you read the essay in this about the Faraka, there are people who have lost their homes 17 times. And at the time when I wrote it, now I went back just last year and they've lost it again. So it's just going on and on and on and on. What is my discomfort in front of that? But to answer your question, yes, it was not easy. And I was constantly asked, "Arey, bacche ko kaun dekhega if you keep going?" And I was like, you never asked my husband that. He was traveling equally. And what we would do, my husband and I, we would tag team. So my daughter was never left alone. So when he would travel, I would stay home. When I would travel, he would stay home. So she always had at least one parent at home. But of course, all our friends used to tease us. They're like, okay, you can never find the two of them together at any time because there's always one of them traveling. It wasn't easy in some ways, but we made it work, and I think support of the family was great.
Did you ever think of giving up?
No. I mean, how, yeah? If we gave up, what would happen, right? It would just, nobody would tell these stories. And that's the point, right? I mean, we don't hear some of these stories in the newspapers today. And even if we hear it, we only hear the symptom. Ki, haan, drought hua, ya flood hua. Lekin, kyun? How did we get to that point? That history is never followed. And I was so keen to make sure that people understood that this was not by accident that this happened. This is not an unfortunate disaster, natural disaster. It's 100% man-made. Unfortunately, it's 100% man-made. And it can be corrected, so there is recourse. So you have to tell these stories, at least I have to tell these stories. So for me, there was no question of giving up at all. But yes, it's hard because who's going to pay you to keep going back to these places? Funding is really hard to come by for such work.
How do you divide your time between researching, meeting people, going to these places, documenting, making art, making films, raising funds, being you.
No, it's really hard in that sense. Funds are very hard, and I can only do these stories when I do have a grant. So if somebody has given me money, like for this book, for the travel, Rohini Nilekani and Nilekani Philanthropies backed it. So I had to go with a begging bowl, and they were really generous, and I'm so thankful for people like her who are far-seeing, and she even backs scientific research, and she's doing really good stuff with her philanthropy. So thanks to people like that, it was even possible. But otherwise, and when I don't have money to travel, is when I make art at home. What are you going to do?
But you said that it's difficult to raise money. What is the difficulty? Because people don't see the importance of the work? Or they don't understand why it is required?
No. So they love the story idea, but they'll say, when are you going to turn the story in? And I'll say 6 months from now, because you have to do this slowly over time. You have to observe the land, you have to talk to people, go back again and again to see how it's happening. Now, if I pitch a story in Feb about an erosion that's going to happen in July, I'm not going to be able to file the story until August.
Dheeraj nahi hai.
Exactly. So the point is that we have to educate even our editors that such stories are long-term, slow burn stories, and that they need to be told because these are the semaphores of what's to come. Our quick fire, "Arey, aaj ye hua, wo hua," it's gone. I mean, that's not really the story itself. So we have to educate even the editors, because they themselves don't see the value in waiting and publishing, or even doing a series that brings out the issues.
Yeah. You mentioned that in the Brahmaputra river, there are 2 types of dolphins, and both are blind because of the amount of toxins that are put into the...
No. So it's not the toxins. The Brahmaputra is a very silty river. Ganga is also very silty. Indus is also very silty. So there are 2 types of river dolphins, Indus river dolphins and Gangetic river dolphins. And they're both blind because the river is silty. So they don't need their eyes. They can't see. So they don't need their eyes. Over time they've lost their eyes, and it's just become like a film where they can kind of tell which direction light's coming from, but they don't use it to do anything. All of their mating and hunting and everything is done by echolocation. So, yeah.
Sure. And there is, India and Bangladesh have decided that they're going to create a...
They have created.
They've created now.
It's functioning also, I think.
Wow. It's a coal-fired
plant which is just 14 kilometers north of a dolphin sanctuary in the Sundarbans, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And there was an oil spill there, right there at the dolphin sanctuary, just a little bit away in the Sela River. There was an oil spill of 358,000 liters of oil, heavy fuel oil, and the whole 80 kilometers of the Sundarbans was caked in black. Again, now I'm wishing that I had photographs to show, but anyway, I knew this would happen. So it's all caked in black. So yeah, and now because of the thermal power plants, there's even more traffic that will be going back and forth. And we have so many boats capsizing with fertilizers, with grain, with sand, with salt, with coal, fly ash, with coal, with all kinds of things in a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
But tell me, all of these statements that we make at platforms like COP and etc., where is the gap between how we want to project our country versus what's the reality of our country?
So, Chandra Singh says something. He says, before the actual crisis comes a crisis of imagination. That is exactly what it is. And it's not just, again, this government, right? COP has been going on for many years. I went to the COP 21 in Paris, and even there we made lots of grandiose statements and stuff like that. You know what ends up happening? It's what we want to, and India has 43% of its mix as renewable energy now, which is great, and it's going to get better. But if you put blinkers on and you only say, I have to get to net zero, I have to get to zero emissions, and you don't take the mix into consideration, where are these Where are these wind farms coming up? Where are these solar farms coming up? Is large hydro really green? You know, what kind of destruction is that going to cause? If you see things in isolation and you just build towards that, you're going to find yourself on a slippery slope. Because there's going to be a ton of other things. You know, it's like a web. If you pull something, everything moves. Everything gets disrupted. If you break one thread, it's all going to be affected. So I think that is really important to understand and to be able to see it as an intersection of issues. Not just getting to net zero with a blind, laser-focused, just that I have to hit it. That goal is not important. How are we going to make this land sustainable when we have climate change sitting on top of us? We have to look at it in that sense, and then we'll make the right decisions. If we don't, we will end up making wrong decisions, and that's what's happening right now. There is no connection between what we're seeing on ground and what we're saying.
Can you tell me a good example of where policy, ecology, people, ecosystems have somehow been streamlined and have worked in alignment with each other to create something to bring forth a change?
Can I come back next year with an answer, maybe? It's hard, yeah? It's hard to say when... Sorry.
It's no good example.
No, because we are laser focused on GDP, and that then breaks a lot of other things, which, like I said, takes us down a slippery slope. So it's hard to come up with something at the top of my head. However, having said that, there are a lot of people who are restoring ecologies. Just outside, just near, in Jaipur, there's Kishan Bagh. I don't know. Yes, his Kishan Bagh, for example. And his, just below Mehrangarh Fort, his Rao Jodha Park. This is bringing back ecology like it used to be. And he is one person. There are many people like him who are working. For example, the person who's sitting right next to me, Aastha, is doing excellent work as well. There are people like you guys who have the right ideas and who are doing right by the land. And when that becomes the critical mass, it'll become good. But right now, policy making those things, as you well know, it's like pushing, it's a Sisyphean thing to push that stone up there.
Apparently planting trees and making water bodies is not considered development.
Exactly. So that's the thing, right? It's our soch. Soch mein badlav aana chahiye ki, you know, what is it? When you have clean water, clean air, and abundant food for everybody, why is that not development?
Clean skies also.
Yes, clean air.
A star for so long.
Exactly. So why is that not important? Why is that not development? You know? Why is doing that?
Mental health.
Exactly. And that's why. So it's a crisis of imagination. I think Chatar Singh has it. He should become Prime Minister. I think we should have Chatar Singh for Prime Minister. But I'm just kidding. It's just that, right? If you understand what is actually development, what will help health, will help kids, will help, you know, women, just the health of the society itself, then it's...
I want to open the space for questions, but before we do that, just one last thing which I ask everybody, because it's just, how do we know that there's a lot of traditional knowledge systems that have been lost, especially in our country. How do we retain the knowledge that still exists? And I mean, you mentioned so many amazing people, Tarikul Bhai and Khaitan and all of those in your stories. And I mean, I was really looking forward to which person will you tell the story with now, you know, in every chapter that kind of came. So that was, I really enjoyed that. But how do we, and there must be so many people.
Exactly, yeah.
So many people who understand, who breathe the land, who knows the names of the clouds, who know how the sand shifts, you know, it's incredible.
And by knowing that, they know how to predict certain things and they know how to solve for it. Like you said, the Andaman people before the tsunami, right? So it's not romanticizing old knowledge, or just that, oh, it's really nice that they know how to grow this thing. For example, and this is something I just learned when I was in, oh, it's not just, already been a year, how? Okay, I was in Bengal in November last year, and I learned that there used to be a kind of rice they used to grow, which when the floods, again, floodplains, no? The Ganga floods every year, it should, because it brings silt. That's how all of that land grows all that wonderful rice. And when the water rises, the flood waters rise, there was a kind of rice which would shoot up to keep its head above that water. So it could grow a foot in a day, just because the water would also rise that much and would keep going up. And they would harvest it from boats. We have lost those kinds of species of rice which are flood resilient. We have lost millets which are drought resilient. We have lost so many things because we have gone to a monoculture, or we have gone to some kind of adopted thing which is not right for our land. So reclaiming, listening as much as possible, and reclaiming the connections before they are lost even more. We may not be able to get back everything, but to at least reclaim what we still have, we just have to listen, yeah? We just have to listen. Go out there and listen to the people who are living with the land.
Thank you.
So we have, but I'm going to request everyone one question per person. Please keep your questions very crisp and no statements. Thank you.
Being a medical person, I'm a doctor, there is evidence of gut microbiomes changing because of trash burning in pregnant women and affecting children's milestones. Have you looked at it, or have you had any experience of that?
I have not, but it's interesting that you mentioned this, and I have made a mental note of it. I will look into it. But again, pollutants in the air, like the sir here also mentioned, they are almost every week we are seeing studies that are coming up with how they are affecting us, whether it's brain health, whether it's gut health, whether it's many ways. Yeah. So again, it comes down to, do we listen to this, and take action. It depends on what our priorities are. Like they say, if you make it a priority, you will find a way. If you don't, you will find an excuse. So
It's restrained us from making any comments, but I will submit to you that this is by far one of the best sessions we have had this
Thank
year.
Thank you.
As far as food goes, Rajasthan is one place where we move our food with the seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Til and bajra are something that comes up in winter, and every one of us enjoys the gajak and the khichdi and the roti that comes with it. Now my question. Jaipur city used to have water bodies and lakes in a circumference of 60 kilometers all around, and my childhood is spent fishing, swimming, and doing whatever you can in these areas.
Wow.
And not one of them survives.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way of bringing them back?
Yes. I'm sure you're still getting rain, right?
We do.
Yeah.
But we have anicuts, we have buildings, we have the whole inlet is gone.
Yeah. So I think it'll again come down to make it a priority and find a way, but I'm sure there are ways, right, Aastha? And
yeah, I mean, we will perhaps have to, this is my understanding, which is very limited, but I guess we'll have to study the old ways of water, and then we'll have to redirect them, and we'll have to create spaces where this water can be restored, and that can be brought. I mean, they did some amazing work at the Jal Mahal a few years ago, and they brought back the wildlife in Jal Mahal, which is, I think, one of the very good examples of what the state it was in versus to what they did to it with some eco-restoration work. So.
And in distinction, what is happening to Ramgarh? With all the litigation, with everything going on.
Yeah.
Not a problem.
Yeah.
the
session. Thank you. You know, when COVID hit and we had the first lockdown, and there was a lot of buzz, I guess, to say that, you know, the world is getting cleaner, the lakes are clean, the rivers are clean, the air is clean. We had spottings of deer and whatever in Haridwar. Did that affect policy change at all? Like, it made people happy, but did they do anything? Like, they got ready-made cleanliness, right?
Correct.
Did anybody keep it?
No. In fact, when those things came and everybody was like, oh man, the world is changing and this is how it's going to be. Now we'll all realize and this is how it will be when COVID ends. I'm sorry, the cynic in me used to say, yeah, right. No, unfortunately, no. In fact, it became double because we lost so much GDP and things went down and, you know, businesses shut and stuff like that. There were many places where, and around the world, not just in India, around the world, where regulations, environmental regulations were eased so that business could take off again, and so pollution was allowed and things like that. So in fact, we went the other way. And ma'am here had a question.
Sorry, I just want to, I guess there is also, from one perspective, extreme dependency on policy. Like, how many of us drive by a landfill and think, oh, it's my trash, which it is. So I guess there's also that connection that we need to start making. The cities work quieter because we were not driving. The cities work cleaner because we were not throwing trash. So I guess it's also individual.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very nice, very good point.
Yeah, I agree with this gentleman who said this was one of the most wonderful sessions we've had here.
Thank you.
And very important too. I want to ask whether, will it not be proper to have more of this at school education and college levels, the awareness, to bring the awareness and some research, how to change our the way we handle ecology and all that?
Wonderful point. And I think to date, the best, the compliment which has meant the most to me that I got for this book is that it should be made mandatory reading in schools. And truly, I think that is where we can affect change. I think my generation is a write-off. There's not much happening. But the youngsters, I think that's where we can really affect change, and truly teaching them about local ecology. So for example, Bangaloreans are taught about how Bangalore works, you know, so that they can actually go out and change things right then and there. What's ending up happening is we have a standard textbook which has come from England or something, which is called Environmental Sciences. It means nothing to anybody. And so, in fact, tribals in Arunachal Pradesh used to come and tell me and say, we're sending our kids to school, but what are they learning? They're not even able to live in their forest and they learn nothing about it. The teacher is from Tamil Nadu. How is really going to even teach them about what's going on here and what their life is like? So truly, I think in education itself, ecology and local geography is so important. You bring up such a wonderful point.
I've been trying to talk with educationists about this. Why not teach about the local geography of a place and the history of the place, to bring in more,
really
awareness. And,
100%, yeah.
But somehow nothing is happening in that field.
Yes, that's the problem. It's when it's controlled centrally, when someone is so disconnected from what's happening in local places, it's very hard to change that. You have to, and so maybe it's a way for all of us to maybe have more sessions like this. Have sessions like this for kids, and keep at it, right, Aastha? I think she works a lot with kids, right? They do come by.
We're all kind of waiting for a miracle, and all it takes is throw a child next to a tree. I mean, not throw, but almost throw. Yeah, or anything. I mean, that is great, and that is that one always hopes for. But yeah, just go out.
And I think we should all discover that child in us. It's there. It's still there. That same curiosity is still there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sure.
Thanks, madam, for a wonderful session. This is Dr. Girish Goyal. Recently, the government of India has come out by incorporating one section under the Companies Act, where the companies are compulsorily required to contribute 2% of their profits for the corporate social responsibility. So roughly that amounts come to rupees 20,000 crore to 25,000 crore per annum. Whether that amount cannot be incurred for the preservation of the environment and ecology.
And again, CSR develop. They like, at least in Bangalore and thereabouts, there seems to be a push for using it towards educational NGOs and things like that, where they can see that kind of, they seem to have those very tangible, you put something and you see the result, you get it back. Environment is a long-term thing. It's like a marathon, it's not a sprint. So your results may not be immediate. And I don't know whether the goals of CSR and the needs of the environment, there's some mismatch. So we see a lot less, Dheeraj again, and that kind of staying power, keep at it, because this lambe race ka ghoda hai. So you need to keep, feeding it. So I think there's some kind of, we seem to want quick results in everything, and that's not the way the environment works. So, but I would love for, again, to revive, like for example, the lake systems or the ponds or even a river. It doesn't take that many millions of rupees or anything. It's not that intensive. It just requires it requires vision. It requires will. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Really, it was just amazing listening to both of you. I'm going to request our General Manager for ITC Rajputana, Mr. Rana, to please come up and present the mementos.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for this lovely interaction.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Both of you have combined well.
And those who read the book will know the meaning.
Arati, you'll have to do some signing.
Sure, of course.
Thank you so much, Aastha.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
पहाड़ों से गलियों किनारों से तेरी पहले की पहचान है। बादलों विचारों से खुशी की फुहारों से काहे जाने तू अनजान है। हर दिन पग चल दूर है जाता जाने कहाँ तू जाएगा। गोल है धरती और इस पर जो खोजेगा वो पाएगा। सांस भरेगा लंबी तो तू चैन मुफ्त में पाएगा। घर आने से डर जाने को बना नहीं था तू। आओ जी मेरे देश मेरे गांव मेरी धूप मेरी छाँव से मिलाऊं। आओ जी मेरे देश मेरे गांव मेरी धूप मेरी छाँव से मिलाऊं। आओ जी मेरे देश मेरे गांव